Boom, boom, and let's get the title suggestions going too, because I think the JBot is up and accounted for. I do believe.
Ooh, there's my YouTube notification.
Did you get into YouTube?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting how where YouTube decides to send that or not. Not everybody gets it. You think you definitely get it if you're subscribed and you hit the notification button. Then I think you're guaranteed to get the live notification. But if you don't hit that, then it uses an algorithm to figure out how much JB content you've been watching recently.
Oh, shit,
and if you've backed off a little bit or you've skipped a couple of shows, I think it stops pushing you the notifications. But it sort of feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Yeah, you miss one, and then you'll never know again when it's happening.
Give me another shot.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw Philip DeFranco ranting about this today.
His latest video, he seems pretty upset, actually.
Yeah, really annoyed that his notifications are just not going out.
Yeah, well, Wes and I were...
Chris Perello has been ranting about this for the past 2 years.
Well, Wes and I were... Our conversation just before we started was basically the bad situation for Linux YouTubers, because I was telling Wes that if you want to make a decent living on YouTube, I did the math before I stopped doing the vlog, and it's something like to get decent money, and a decent, remember this is Pacific Northwest wages with house, family, and car and things like that, to get around 60-ish thousand a year. You need to be getting about 25,000 video views, but that doesn't account for like YouTube demonetization and adpocalypse, which could also throw a curveball.
Right. And everyone knows now that you diversify. You don't just do.
But who in the Linux space do you see other than just a few standout videos? They never get that many views. I don't think there's that many Linux consumers on YouTube. It's easy to get 25,000 views on YouTube, but not when you're talking about Linux and open source. I think
it's funny you should be talking about this, because I just really wanted to highlight this week, or as close to this week as possible. I went to the cryptocurrency London event.
Oh yeah,
last week, and it was interesting because I wasn't in there for cryptocurrency. I'm not interested in cryptocurrency at all. I'm more interested in blockchain technology. But there were some really interesting companies there doing some cool stuff. So Steam, as you know, is like a social media site, or Steam is a social media site. But they do partnerships with other companies, and one of them is called Utopian.io. And Utopian.io is basically building a model around open source software projects.
Utopia or Utopian?
Utopian.io.
Okay.
Okay, you can search for it.
Utopian.io. I'll go look for it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And they basically take open source projects, and they induct them into the Steam blockchain or Steam blockchain, and build up a community around them, and people who actively contribute back to the project can get rewards back in cryptocurrency. So it doesn't have to be code necessarily. It could be things like translations or manuals or graphics or anything else, and it builds this idea around the open source project actually making money direct from people who are contributing to it. It's a very interesting point.
And your comparison there would be something maybe for content creators too.
Well, no, I mean the point is that Steam also has DTube, which is decentralized tube, and DLive, and they basically work in the same way. So you put content out on DTube, and you're earning money in cryptocurrency by people upvoting your videos. So the bottom line is, the popular ones get upvoted, and you earn money from being popular. So you put out good content, you make money.
That also could. God, how does that not turn into clickbait 2.0 though?
Yeah.
Well, no, this is the cool thing about it. Okay, so the whole idea about upvoting people for good content is that it's community managed about the weighting of the content. So you have to have so many people, of how can I put it, sufficient Steam power to be able to upvote your content to say it's legitimate content. So you earn Steam power by being a good person in the community. The more Steam power you have, the more your vote counts.
Interesting. That's particularly interesting. That's a really interesting take on that.
The problem with DTube is it just sucks at delivering video. That's the problem. I have yet to see a single video actually play.
No, I mean DTube does work occasionally, but
There you go.
no, but they do use IPFS as well, though, and that works much more reliably. It does.
Interesting.
Snap install IPFS.
Oh. There was a new snap that I saw recently that I was surprised could actually be a snap. And I thought it was something more like at the system level, but now I can't remember what it was. You guys, am I ringing any bells? I know it's pretty vague, but there was some new snap I saw go across the news headlines, and it was like, that's possible?
Was it a
Notepad
snap
plus
of
plus?
flatback?
The Windows version of Notepad plus plus?
No.
I'm not even kidding.
You
That is
maniac.
the fastest
That's
growing
sad.
snap right now.
Really?
I'll give that a go, actually.
Yeah, snap install notepad hyphen the word plus hyphen the word plus.
Wow.
Fastest
It's
growing
actually-
snap.
It's pretty interesting that you can and I know the first thing everyone's going to shout at me is the Flatpak guys did this with games and chucked them on the Pirate Bay, bundled wine and a game, dodgy pirated copies of games. Okay, yes, I know they've done it before, but this is like the first time we've had a legitimate application bundled with wine in the Snap Store, because it's an open source application. It's not some proprietary. It's not like someone took Photoshop and bundled it with wine and shoved it in the store. This is a GPL application that's been bundled with wine and put in the store. And it's a weird one, but it turns out it's a popular application, and so people install it. And it got me curious as to what Windows applications that you miss from Windows that are not proprietary, which is the tricky one.
Yeah.
Would you want available as a snap?
I can only think of commercial ones, because I don't.
That's
the
problem.
only thing I
can
use
only
Windows
think
for.
I can think
Right.
of commercial ones.
If I want to use free software, I just use Linux.
The lunatic in me thinks we should bundle wine and Steam inside a Snap just for the lols.
Yeah,
so you can get
totally.
Windows games.
Yeah.
Alan, that would help me a lot because it's a pain having to add a PPA just to get wine on my computer.
Yeah, I'm done with PPAs. Do you guys?
My
Go ahead.
coworker would love to have Photoshop, or I'm sorry, Adobe Creative Cloud bundled.
Yeah,
into a
sure, of
Snap.
course,
That would
Photoshop
be
or of course.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
And we need to teach Canonical a lesson.
Obviously.
Totally do.
Always.
Okay, so I got a question for you guys.
I can't cry for them too much.
Have you seen Google's Talk to Books? You can browse passages from books using their new experimental AI. It's not a traditional search. It's a creativity tool, Google calls it. So I thought maybe we'd put a couple of things in here from our community. So how about Richard Stallman? Let's see what books talk about Richard Stallman, right?
Do it.
How about Richard Stallman eats? Let's see what's that give us. Stallman is a shock to behold in the age of aerobatics. He looks like a pale-skinned, soft-bodied dweller of okay, let's move on. Here is another one. Richard Stallman at stallman.org created the GNU project for the GNU operating system. All right, that's kind of basic. Well, how about let's try Linus Torvalds.
Oh, there we go.
How about Linus
Torby.
Torvalds sandals? Let's see what we get. Did Linus bring shoes that Lucy wanted? Who is Linus Torvalds? A book to read about open source software development. All right, it's kind of getting close. This is kind of interesting. So the idea is you give Google a phrase or or just a keyword, and it goes through and finds books that talk about it. So like I could search for Linux, and then boom, you get networking for dummies. You get theories of communication networks, CompTIA, A++ exams, all that kind of stuff. And then it pulls out the passages from it. So, for example, like on the theories of communication networks, it pulls out a passage about Linux is an operating system that was launched in 1991 by Linus Torvalds, a computer science student at the University of Helsinki. And then it goes on and tells you more about Linux. So it's pulling you out the relevant sections. Kind of neat. A neat trick. So if you're doing research on an open source project, you can go to books.google.com.
What if you put in something more abstract, like
Okay, give me-
meaning of life, or
Whoa. Meaning of life. All right, Google AI. Let's search for the meaning of life. All right. Many people think the question of life's meaning as a religious question. Although, as the previous two chapters have argued, people find a great deal of meaning in work, love, and masturbation. What?
well said, Googs. Well said.
What?
Not wrong.
Oh, that's not what I expected. Okay.
That sounds
Settle down, everyone. Settle down.
For you, isn't it?
Let's see. Did we? Let's see. What happened with Suri? I'm gonna pull him in. See, paging Dr. Suri. Are you there, Suri? Hello. Let's see. Where's Suri? Where is he? Oh, I can't move people. Oh my gosh. Am I really that ineffectual that anybody have the? Oh, maybe Mr. Free up there is working with Suri. Maybe. I don't know what's happening, but we have Suri from System 76 up in the labs.
I think he's AFK.
That program, although it may be attractive, is really a trap.
Well, shit. Okay. All right. That's fine. That's fine. I got one story before it's time for him to talk.
Oh, it's 2. Look at that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I know. So now I've entered the delay phase, but that's cool. That's welcome to the delay zone. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. Anybody else in the class have anything to chat about before we kick the show off?
Fuchsia's not Linux.
Fuchsia's not Linux. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Although I didn't really pull anything out that was like, we got to talk about this. But I did see that Fuchsia's not Linux thing.
I mean, it's important because people are confused at this point whether or not Google might go completely closed source now.
Yeah, especially with the Oracle stuff. All right, so how about I'll ask the Mumble Room a question. It's open to everybody. It'll be I'll fill in the blank, okay? Jupiter Broadcasting's next Linux show is...
Ubuntu Mate is awesome.
The Ubuntu Mate Action Show.
The Ubuntu Studio Podcast.
Okay.
Plan C. Cryptocurrency in general.
It's interesting. The idea of a distro-specific podcast.
Yeah, but running Arch in production.
I mean, the Ubuntu podcast, that seems kind of obvious because that's a big distro.
The Gen 2 challenge.
We spin it off to its own
Just a whole show of us building software.
It's just that Wimpy and I are tooting our own horns, that's all.
Toot. They snapped it.
I've got a horn toot.
This week in snaps.
Yes.
Yep. There's a surprisingly rich source of content for that.
I bet I know a couple of topic experts too. I could refer questions to.
Wait, what?
Yeah, if you take a look at the Snapcraft.io Twitter feed, you'll see all that's happening in the Snap world, as curated by myself and my good friend Alan Pope.
And a cat. Snapcraft Twitter.
How about a virtual crypto party where we teach people how to be more private?
Yeah, I think a show like around like home building like systems or security would be interesting, but it's part of probably a larger show. This is cool. I'm not following this, but I am now.
Oh, snap.
How about the Linux and beer show?
Yeah.
Both products we want free.
Beer is tasty. That's true.
There's a place out of Tacoma that uses Linux for brewing their beer, I think.
Shut up.
We
What?
talked to them, like years ago.
No, I
back
thought
at
they were
Liz
up north.
Ted's
No, I don't
podcast.
think they're Tacoma. I think it's more like Bellingham, isn't it?
No, I thought I could have sworn they were from Tacoma.
That might be, since I can't remember. I've wanted to go back there, and I can't even remember their names, so you might be right. But that was cool. They used Linux.
That was so cool.
Even before Raspberry Pis were a thing and stuff, they were using small systems running Linux. They were kind of ahead of the curve.
It was weird. I keep wanting to say they were an Arduino user thing going on.
If that was even a thing? This is years ago.
Gosh, that was so long ago.
And we're officially old. And we just became old men right
Maybe they're a candidate for the thing we're talking about later in the show.
No, you might be right, actually. Well, you know what we could do, I suppose, is if he's not available, I could punt till after the ad. That's what I'll do. I'll just be flexy.
If you need a bit of filler, I can talk to you about high DPI and Ubuntu Mate.
Oh, really? Well, let's do it. Let's plan on it.
There's more?
How's that coming, Wimpy?
It is concluded.
I can talk to you about future plans for Ubuntu Studio.
Oh, actually, that wouldn't be bad either, because I saw there's a story about that. Ubuntu. I was thinking we might wait until it's closer for that, but I may call on you for it, Eric.
It's pretty damn close now.
No, I mean, no, the studio stuff. Yeah, no, the studio news that I was thinking is different. So maybe I'm thinking of something different. But the high DPI stuff, yes. Let's maybe we'll get to both of it. We'll see. It depends on Surya, I think. Yes, April 21st, 2017. Ubuntu high DPI first steps. How about that? From 1 year ago?
Chris, because they finished, high DPI support, I might just say heck with it and run upstairs and get my MacBook and just throw Ubuntu Mate on it while we're talking.
That would be
had
fitting.
Feedback from people with MacBooks and Retina displays to tell me it works very well.
It does, huh?
Huh. I think
Beta tester.
Levi's ready to try it too because
He
apparently
sure
he
is.
finished his
And he's
chew before
becoming
we
a
even got
beta
started.
tester.
There you go.
You
All right.
know what? What the hell? I'm gonna run upstairs and get it
All
before
right.
we start.
All right. Well, don't interrupt. We're starting now, so don't interrupt the intro. All right, here we go. If Sari comes in, we'll take him in. We'll just do a little tag skis. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Stanley F. by. We're gonna do the Unplugged program. I can't believe they let us do this, Wes.
No kidding.
Oh
This
my
is it's not up to safety
It's
spec.
so ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Okay. Linux Unplugged in the 3s and the 2s. This is Linux Unplugged, episode 245. Welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show that's running the numbers, looking at the distros, and watching all of the projects. My name is Chris.
My name is Wes.
Hello, Mr. Payne. It's good to be with you again on episode 245. Coming up in this week's episode, we're going to do all of our traditional community news, as well as some new project releases, some app picks, and some development sprints. But then, towards the end of the show, we're going to talk about Microsoft's new Linux-powered devices that will be coming to the market soon. It's all of the news this week, and it's part of Azure Sphere, which is an overall large three-stage, three-component effort that Microsoft's putting on that may just wind up dominating IoT. And we'll tell you how Linux is playing a role, what component of this is Linux-based, and what you can expect in the pretty near future. Wes and I got on a phone call with one of the core creators and developers from Microsoft. They took the time to get the team on the phone with us before the show, and we asked them all of the hard questions. We got the specifics about what they're running on these devices, and we'll share what we learned with you later on in the show, straight from the horse's mouth. We couldn't have gotten better people to describe the tech to us. It was really pretty awesome. But before we get all of that, there's like news, community stuff, and a mumble room to bring in. So let's do all of that right now. Time-appropriate greetings, virtual lug.
Maybe 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps.
Wow. That kind of made me hungry, actually. Now I have a bit of an appetite. Well, guys, we have much to cover today, and I don't really know where to start other than maybe with Linus. That just seems like the appropriate place right now. Linus Torvalds on the Linux kernel mailing list announced plans that you should not be excited about and mean absolutely nothing, so would you please stop talking about it? Except for Linus keeps talking about it. So he says the next release doesn't really seem to be shaping up to be any particularly big release, and there is nothing particularly special about it either. The most special thing that happened is just sort of a numerology thing. The Linux kernel has passed the 6 million Git object mark. And this, he says, is reason enough to call the next kernel version 5.0. This version is completely meaningless. It should mean that it's just silly and that maybe I won't even switch to it because even numerological rules would be a silly reason. So I may not do it, and I may just surprise you. But 5.0 will happen someday, and it will be and should be meaningless. You have been warned.
I like it.
I can't wait.
Yeah, right?
I can't wait for I have no reason to be excited. I am really looking forward to Linux kernel 5.0 for no reason at all. I thought, okay, all right. Thank you, Linus. Thank you. So that's how we start the show out today. But let's talk about something that's a little bit higher up in the kernel stack. And that's the user interface. And Mr. Martin Wimpress tooling away like a soldier at Ubuntu Mate's high DPI support. And it was almost a year ago that Wimpy came on here and told us about the first steps of bringing high DPI support to Ubuntu Mate. In fact, I'm looking at the post right here from April 2017, where it's a screenshot that Wimpy took on his XPS 15 4K screen, and with a few dirty hacks, with Ubuntu 17.04 as a base, we had a high DPI. So fast forward now about a year, where are we at with all of this, Wimpy?
We're all done. It's all high DPI to the max in all the right places. So I think I last spoke to you about this maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I said I wouldn't talk about it again, but I'm lying because I'm going to talk to you about it now. So what's changed since then is we had a few bits that weren't implemented. So one of the big changes is now that Marco, which is the window manager for the Mate desktop, that now all of its window controls and everything, all of those scale and work correctly. So where before, when high DPI was enabled, we were standing up compis underneath in order to fill that gap, we don't need to do that anymore.
Wow.
So the behavior is just like what you used to have. You can either choose to run Marco or Compis, and it's not constrained by whether you're using high DPI or not. So that's one of the big changes. And then Kaja, the file manager, has now had the full high DPI treatment. And in terms of user-facing changes that are going to be obvious there, that's really sort of, we've made sure that the icons are all using vector icons and what have you, so it all looks a bit crisper and nicer. So yeah, and there's been a few tweaks and touches all the way through to just improve things. So there's some improvements to the way that font DPI scaling works. So it gives you the ability to sort of do pseudo fractional scaling by having a scaled desktop and then manipulating the font DPI. So yeah, it's all looking really good now, and all those patches have landed in 18.04 as of about a week ago. All being tested, looking in good shape. So our high DPI journey's finished. And interestingly, you said it was a year ago. We had that first discussion about his rather shonky setup, but the actual journey started a year before that, just after 16.04 closed. We embarked on our journey towards GTK3.
Right.
So this has been 2 years in the making.
Wow, yeah, good point. And congratulations. Let me start there. Let me just say congratulations. And then also, work well done. Really nice to see this.
Yeah. Woohoo.
We were just talking on the pre-show about how there's just a few systems right now. I can't really decide like if my next rig is going to be high DPI, and so I'm really happy to see this getting pushed forward by more and more desktops.
Yeah, I think the state of high DPI in general is in a good place.
Seems like it's getting better
as well.
Yeah,
yeah. I can remember some. Yeah, I think when you got your XPS, I think that was the third gen. So that was about 2.5, 3 years ago. I think you got that laptop.
Correct.
And you were saying, well, these applications don't scale, and I think Firefox and Chrome both didn't scale at that time. These days, and it's not just it's nice obviously that the desktop that I am involved in now has high DPI scaling, but when I install lots of other applications, I see just about everything scaling now. The one obvious standout that doesn't scale is GIMP. Which is disappointing, and they're getting there. They've got some cheeky workarounds in GIMP 2.10, which is still based on GTK2, but they do some magic to use larger icons and bump up the font scaling to sort of fill the gap in the meantime.
Yeah.
But other than that, there isn't a whole lot that I run and think, oh, this isn't high DPI scale.
It has gotten better. It could be the story could be a bit better still on the Plasma side of things. There's still 3 or so places you have to go to really get it all working. But Cheese Bacon asks an interesting question, and I don't know if you have the rough idea, but just from like a raw number standpoint, do you have any idea of roughly how many assets had to be touched to get to a high DPI version, or had to be replaced, like icons and things like that?
Oh, crikey, thousands.
Yeah.
Wow. Thousands. Every icon, those were retouched by Daniel Foray. He did an icon rework for us in 1704. Michael Turnell did all of the small assets to provide scaled versions and recolored them. So that's everything from like the check boxes and the outlines around the buttons, because all the buttons are styled and themes. So and then all of the CSS at the back end for the GTK3 stuff, whole chunks of that had to be adapted so it knew how to apply styling when it was in a scaled mode. So, when I say it took 2 years to get there, just building on top of GTK3 is only one of those steps, and, reworking all of the themes to understand how all of these assets scale and are provided, that was a whole chunk of work, and there were numerous themers and digital artists involved in that endeavor. So yeah, thousands and thousands of assets have been touched along the way.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you guys are doing the hard work there. So that'll be all good to go in 1804. So when I get the final 1804, so I'll have that.
Yeah, I think there's one teeny tiny thing we're going to fix post-release regarding high DPI, but it's so insignificant I'm not going to mention it and nobody will notice it.
Perfect.
Okay, then. Don't pay any attention over here. Well, thanks for the
it's
update.
Misdirection.
Yeah, very, very good. You know, while we're on the Ubuntu vein here, Eric, I know I saw news about a week ago, I think, about the Ubuntu Studio project rebasing or making big changes. Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, so we've got some great things going on. First of all, we established a council so that we can take some load off of the project leader, which is really a good thing. But what we're doing is we are trying to do some things such as replace our meta package installer with something like the Ubuntu Mate Welcome, which I guess has also been forked to Budgie. And so we're going to be including that, to let people tailor the experience the way they want. And we're also considering perhaps a change of default desktop environment and perhaps add additional desktop environments as options. So there's a number of things we're kind of brainstorming and working on. We definitely want to get Ubuntu Studio out of the stagnation it's been in for about the past 2 years.
Well, I look forward to seeing how that goes because I've used it on and off. It's a pretty solid distro for people that are, maybe want to get into podcasting as an example or something like that. It's pretty great. So Ubuntu Studio will have some change. When do those start landing? So it sounds like the council stuff is already in place, but other changes, is that a release or two away?
We're aiming for 18.10 for the first of the big changes, but 1804 is really just going to be iterative, and the only thing about 1804 is for us, it will not be an LTS just due to low manpower.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remembered hearing that. Well, great. Thank you guys for the updates, and definitely keep up the good work and keep us posting on how that goes. I love watching them projects, and it's always cool to see that kind of stuff. It's just so darn great. So darn great. You know what else is great? Ting. Linux.ting.com. It's smarter than unlimited because if you use less, you pay less. It's just a base $6 for your line and then your usage on top of that for your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. That's it. So if you only get a dozen text messages a month, you don't need to pay for 500 text messages. If you can download podcasts and listen to music via Wi-Fi and cache it locally, you probably don't need 12, 15 gigs of data. So just pay for what you use. And if you want multiple devices, like a MiFi or a cell phone, or if you want a backup phone, it's great for that. Because at $6 a month, you can afford to be really, really flexible. And they combine that with a great control panel, fantastic customer service, and a ton of devices that are ready to go. And maybe the most important thing about Ting that I don't talk a lot about because it's just obvious to me now, is they don't have like a strategy to get into media. They don't have a streaming service. They don't have a Ting app store. They don't have a branded experience with partners that they want to push down to my phone. They don't do any of that. They don't care how you use the service. They just want you to have service, and you can pick from CDMA or GSM, and they don't have like some sort of Ting ROM that you'll have to install. So they don't get in the way of updates. If you got a phone that gets frequent updates, like the Pixels and the Nexi and the Motos, they don't get in the way of that. You get the updates as soon as the vendor releases them. That's by far one of my favorite things about Ting, and embarrassingly uncommon in the US when you buy devices from carriers. But there's so many other great things about Ting. The customer service, like I mentioned, is bar none. The control panel, always the best, and much, much more. Start by going to linux.ting.com. Take $25 off a device, or if you bring a compatible device, $25 in service credit. linux.ting.com. Big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Unplugged program, linux.ting.com. Boom. Wes, you found this cool terminal app that for once isn't powered by Node.js, but it's still super cool. It's written in Go, actually.
And how would you ever know it's named GoTop?
Yeah, exactly. You got to make sure you know. And it's another terminal-based graphic activity monitor, and it's so epic. First of all, because it's in Go, it's really simple. It's a small little thing, no big deal. And it has a colored ncurses graph, and it has boxes of memory usage and your process list, and it boxes everything out into individual segments. It's the exact kind of thing if your boss is walking in and you want to have something great up on your screen, and you could just have this up in an SSH terminal, and you just tab over to that when your boss walks in. Oh, yeah, just pulling down some metrics off the old server. You know, meanwhile you're watching YouTube on on another tab.
Yeah, right. Probably also in a terminal, but in the other Tmux pane.
Yeah, actually, you did have a pick for a bare minimal YouTube this week too that almost made it in the show, which could go nice with this minimal YouTube. I don't. Do you want to check your link, see if you have it, because we should almost bust that out. It has a light and dark mode, and the installation is just dead simple. You just clone it down, you run the shell script, you got it to go, and of course it's in the AUR too as gotop-bin. Where was it? Oh yeah. Yeah, so it's minimalist YouTube, and if you go to tube.quinzel.tech, it's QU. I put a link in the thing. Put a link in the IRC for that.
We'll throw a link in.
It's like the Google search page for YouTube. It's just nothing. It's just blank. It's minimal.
So
it's
simple
easy.
and clean. Yeah.
It just gets you the video. It's a great way to use YouTube if you just want to go watch a video, but you don't want all of the rest of YouTube. Wes will drop a link skis in the irc.geekshed.net. Anyways, so this is called GoTop, and GoTop is a super slick looking terminal that we wanted to point you guys to, so you have an app to download this week after the show. And then a call out to a project that used to make it or break my day. It's Clonezilla, and Clonezilla got a good update this week, version 25538, and the most interesting feature is a new massive deployment mechanism based on BitTorrent technology. So the machines that you're imaging become part of the distribution network.
Well, that is just slick.
It's obvious, too, really, if you think about it. Now, it does require some additional disk space to do this, but I've worked on some large networks where you're imaging 30, 40, 50 systems or more, and this could be so useful. It's such a neat thing. They're also baking in some part image support, some additional part image support, and the ability to change Windows 10 host names when you restore an image.
Ooh,
in Clonezilla. Yeah.
Man, Clonezilla, they just keep on going, and it works so well.
So appreciative. It's not something I use frequently, but I am so appreciative.
Every time you need to, right? It's just boom.
And there's a live CD that has now been synced up to Debian SID and running Linux kernel 4.15. So it's a pretty modern, pretty recent live environment to run Clonezilla from. And then they're baking in that BitTorrent distribution. I got to play with that sometime. I don't have any need for that, but I got to play with that. It just sounds so cool. And then to round out a sort of an app pick-ish section, Font Finder is a GTK3 application. Yes, I'm still talking about GTK applications. That is really easy, smooth front end to browse Google's free font archive from the comfort of your Linux desktop. And it's super straightforward. It's exactly what you'd expect, but at the same time, it's pretty nice. You can search for the font you want. So say you want to go get Google's Robo font, or Roboto, I think it is. So you put in Robo, and then it'll show you Roboto, condensed, mono slab, all the different fonts they have. And then in the client-side decoration header bar thingy, it has a nice install button. It'll pull that font down from Googs and load it into your Linux box. Bob's your uncle. Robert's your father. Now you've got a font.
I like it.
Simple, easy, and we'll have a link in the show notes for that because it's up on GitHub. So that's Font Finder.
I did notice there, Chris, it was... did you pick it because it was Rust? Is that why? Your little favorite?
It actually did. That was legitimately what pushed it over. You know me so well. That was totally it too. I was gonna make a Rust joke about it, but then I just gonna let it go. But yeah, you caught me. Sari was gonna join us from System 76, but Mumble is off-putting if you don't use it on an ongoing basis. So I think they had some audio troubles. I might try to grab him later on in the week and just have an offline chat with him about it. But System 76 is joining the GNOME Foundation Advisory Board. And I believe it's actually Sri from System 76 that'll be doing this. And I find this to be a fascinating move because while the advisory board isn't super influential over what GNOME does, because at the end of the day, some developer has to do the work, and it's not like they have a lever they pull on and then a developer comes out the other side. So it can definitely set directions and things like that, but it could also, my understanding, I was going to ask Sari about this, is it can be sort of a sounding board for organizations that are using GNOME or groups that are using GNOME for different projects. That seems like a super sweet position for System 76 to be in. Like,
it makes sense, right?
Yeah. To be able to get to sort of a wider industry data collection of how people are using GNOME when they're building Pop! OS on top of GNOME seems really, yeah.
You're part of the conversation in the community.
Yeah, so good for them. System 76 joining the GNOME Advisory Board. Boom, how about that as a rapid-fire set of app picks and news? We really
That's what we do here on the
we,
Unplugged
we
program.
busted through that quicker than I expected, even with a bonus
Linux
epic.
right to the brain.
Man, if we could just hook it up to your eyeballs, it would be even better. Just suck it right in through the neurons in your eyes.
Coming next week.
Yeah, we're working on that, aren't we? In fact, maybe I'll mention a couple of things. So there is a new mysterious operator behind the scenes. I can't say more than that, but I don't know if you guys remember, but many a weeks ago, I announced around episode 250 we'd be making some changes to the Unplugged program.
Yes, you
I think
did.
I might have mentioned it around 200. I don't know. Well, they arrived a little early, and so we've for about a month and a half, we've been every week. There has been small incremental changes for the better behind the scenes. The poor folks on YouTube have it the worst, but the folks on the podcast version have it the best. So it's been a mixed bag, although we are adding new features to our YouTube video. We're trying a new experimental encoding that will post the video on YouTube and in the show description section include time links for the different chapters of the show.
Slick.
Yeah, that's something we're working on for a bit. So we've been making changes for a few weeks on the Linux Unplugged program. And the core of it is if you haven't updated your RSS feeds, it'd be a good time to go to linuxunplugged.com and /RSS is the feed directly. linuxunplugged.com/RSS. Subscribe to that new feed. Let us know what you think and start sending in your feedback about it at the /contact. So you can go to linuxunplugged.com/contact and let us know what you think. Because it's been a slow iterative change, and we're going through another change. So we've hired someone to do the editing for a bit to see how that works and see what you guys think. So I have been editing the show for the last few weeks. I'll be pulling back a bit. I'll still be involved with all that stuff, but more changes are coming. But they're starting now. We're sort of at the end of it all. So it's a good time to kind of take stock and see what everybody thinks. And if you're on the YouTube side of things, just be patient with us as we sort of retool some of that workflow, because that stuff is a-changing.
But it's exciting times in the Unplugged universe.
Times would be a-changing. Yeah. Oh, and also, speaking of times changing, Tech Talk Today is back on the air. Twice a week, technology show, techtalk.today.
Yeah.
With me and Ange predominantly, but we're going to have folks in town for Linux Fest Northwest, so I'll probably try to get folks to jump on the mic and hang out with us. And
Special guest stars.
Yeah. I bet that Noah Chalaya and I bet I could talk that Noah Chalaya and that Alan Jude.
There you go.
Getting on the mic from time to time. And then, of course, we'll do a live, we may do a live Linux Unplugged from Linux Fest. I don't know. I think we're also going to try to do a tech talk. So we got a lot we're doing, but you can just stay subscribed. You get the best stuff there at linuxunplugged.com/RSS to get the feed directly. All right, so let's move into a couple of final news items for the day. And let's also then get into the huge item of the day, the one that I think people are still processing, and that is that Microsoft is now shipping a Linux product based on the Linux kernel, which I think has caught a lot of people by surprise this week. So we'll talk about that as well. But first we'll mention DigitalOcean. Hold on, Wes. Let me pull out the prop paper. You ready?
We got to be prepared for this.
Yes.
This is serious business.
do.co/unplugged. That's where you go to get a $100 credit. do.co/unplugged. Go there, sign up with a new account, and get a $100 credit for 60 days. You can try out their new mix and match droplet, their flexible droplet, for $15 a month. You choose how much CPU and disk and memory you need. You mix and match the different resources. They also have CPU optimized droplets with massive high-end, greatly, just huge Xeons, just massively powerful. And then, if you want to, you can just throw in a few hundred gigs of RAM. Just throw in a few hundred gigs of RAM too. I don't know what you're doing, but damn, it's amazing. I mean, they have a whole scale. But for me, for my humble needs, I have my favorite sweet spot at 3 cents an hour. In fact, the rigs that I don't have at 3 cents an hour, they got upgrades recently from DigitalOcean, and now it's like they're more than I already had them as like at $5 a month total. Like that's plenty because they're just doing like metric collection or they're like alerts or it's one's a bot and it's like doesn't need a lot. But DigitalOcean recently adjusted all their prices and retroactively just upgraded my machine. So my machines just got better recently. It's so great.
You didn't do anything. They're just better.
I love it. do.co/unplugged. You can deploy a system in less than 55 seconds. Everything is using SSDs. They have 12 data centers all over the world. 20 gigabit connections, 40 gigabit connections. I don't know. It's gigabits. I mean, they're just gigabits for days. Plus private networking on the back end. Block storage they have available as well as S3 compliant spaces storage. Very nice.
Slick.
Network level firewalls. Monitoring baked in to give you metrics on your CPU, your disk, and graph it all for you. It's a really, really, really compelling offer, and you can get $100 of credit to play around when you go to do.co/unplugged, do.co/unplugged. Well, my favorite Linux video editor is having a development sprint as we're on the air, I think, or it's at least in the next few days, if not that. Their team is going to Paris, and they're going to dedicate the time to discuss long-term goals, review application workflow with professional editors, and prepare for the next major release, which is labeled 1808. So the Cadian Live team's going there, and then after there, they're going to the Libre, at least a sub-part of the team is going to the Libre graphics meeting for a Cadian Live workshop on the 30th. So if you're going to be in Paris, you can come say hi to the team. If you're going to the Libre graphics meeting, you can go say hi to some of the Cadian Live team.
That's fantastic.
So a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, who is using Cadian Live? Is anybody else using Cadian Live in production? And I said that Crazy Cast over at Linux Gamecast and Vent Stone was editing an OpenShot. I have been corrected. They are actually using Cadian Live. Nice. So, yeah, another one to the books. I'm trying to keep track. So if you know of anybody out there, a YouTuber or actually somebody who's maybe not on YouTube too, just somebody that's just making content in some other capacity, I'd love to know who is using Cadian Live out there because I've been tracking them. Who's me? Who said that?
Popey.
Oh, Popey. Oh, what are you using? Popey.
So I used it.
It's Ubuntu podcast video, and I didn't even know it.
It is, but we don't use Cadian Live. I used it just briefly today because I wanted to record a video and I needed to redact some personally identifiable information, and I didn't know how to do it. And it turns out that I just Googled blur credit card info or something like that, and I found a tutorial. And within like under a minute, I figured it out and added an effect, drew a box around a thing that I wanted to pixelate, and it just did it. Rendered it out, done. It was so easy. Cadian Live is just awesome.
Really?
Wow.
So what about the fact that it was like, video's moving, right? So like the object kind of moves around in the frame.
No, it was a web page with credit card info in it. But it did show how you could move it, but I didn't need to do that, so I didn't follow the rest of the tutorial. I just got as far as that's what I need to do. That's enough. Shut the video down. It was great. Yeah,
I've played with it lightly, and I like it quite a bit. And I know that when you're working with really long projects, that's why I was asking you, like, what is the Linux Gamecast using these days? Because when you're working with really long projects, a program can get a lot more crashy. It's just totally makes a big difference.
Have you ever watched him? He sometimes live streams him editing his own shows. I think on a Sunday afternoon he does it, my time. Oh. And I've watched him on Twitch sometime, and he's just like chatting to people and saying, "Does this music fit here? What should I do here?" And you can just see him going over and over and over the edit. And I think I've seen Cadian Live crash once for him on a live stream. But yeah, it seems to work for him.
No, I haven't seen it. That's usually probably when I'm recording LAN, so I don't really have a chance. But yeah, I've been experimenting on a couple of behind-the-scenes projects just for like, when we go to Linux Fest, if we have a camera with us, how do I want to edit the resulting footage? Because if I don't figure this out now, it's going to end up on a Mac. That's what my thought process has been. And I've also been experimenting with Reaper, which is an audio editor.
Oh, yeah.
On the other end of things, on Linux. I think the situation with Apple and the Mac Pro is the canary in the coal mine for Apple, that they have no idea how to build high-end computers. They have no idea. The people that are making those computers have obviously lost touch. They don't understand thermal throttling. They don't understand all of these things, and I think it's too late. And even if they ship something decent in 2019 by hiring a team of highly paid professionals to tell them, yes, you're doing everything right, Johnny, I think it's too late. So it's just not a professional workstation anymore unless your workload is doable on laptops or laptop-like components or systems that are cooled like laptops. So I think it's behoovent upon all of us, if that's a word I can make up, to try to replicate our workflow or replace parts of our workflow as much as possible on Linux. The only problem is Cadian Live's getting better for simple edits for me, but Reaper is commercial software. And so it's like, am I really any better off? Because I'm just moving to another commercial solution, but it needs to be sophisticated. It needs to have certain support for industry plugins. It needs to support multi-track.
Right. Yep.
I've got a mixer with ungodly amounts of inputs and outputs, and my recorder needs to be able to read all of those and bring us all in on our own track. And it's stuff that just Audacity can't even do. It's not even capable of doing. So you have to have a certain level of software to do this.
It's a start, I think.
It tends to be commercial. Yeah, at least it's on Linux, though. Yeah, Noah's trying to convince me. I'm not so convinced yet. So I'll be curious to see what comes out of the Acadian Live Sprint. When these things happen, it seems to be pretty good for these projects. Like the results that we get out of it seem to be pretty
You know, I don't
positive.
think I've given it a shot yet, so now I have a new something to play with.
You ought to do like a day in Seattle with Wes.
Yeah, totally.
And then edit it on Acadian Live.
I think I will.
I would so watch that.
Yeah.
You could be a vlogger, Wes. You could. I would watch
Get
the
the
Wes
vlog
vlog,
going.
downtown Seattle of Wes vlog. Is there any Seattle vloggers? You could narrow. You could just own the market and become the next YouTube star, which sounds wonderful.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I've been debating whether to talk about this on air, and so I'm not going to put links in the show notes because I don't want to encourage traffic, but I also feel like it's something that we need to be aware of. And so I don't know if you guys have seen, and I really don't know much about it, but what's been going on with Linux Deepin this week? It's a disgrace, really. So there was an unsubstantiated YouTube video that goes live that says that Linux Deepin is spyware and that it's spying on you. And then the project, after it gets enough traction, of course, because Reddit is a cesspool of D-bags, it gets upvoted, it starts getting a lot of attention, so it becomes on the Deepin project's radar. And they respond with a blog post, and of course there's a communication barrier here, so there was a couple of things that are misunderstood, and they come back and say, well, we're not really spying. What we're doing is we're collecting the number of installs, and they list like the 3 or 4 data points that are pretty basic bitch metrics that aren't really going to offend anybody unless you're looking to be offended. And of course, then there's a follow-up video that then sort of just makes hay out of their admission that they are collecting some metrics. And I told you, here's proof of the spying. And then everybody in the Reddit comments, oh, they're saying they're not spying, but then they write a blog post saying exactly how they're spying on us. And it's just outrage after outrage. And I think we have a problem here because and I won't go through the whole thing, but you guys know I'm a big believer that unlike the Windows admin community or the Apple user community or these different subsects of technology, the open source community is vulnerable to this sort of insidious infighting in a way that I think is destructive to people's motivation to contribute to open source code. So I think it's worth talking about just really quickly. I won't go into it because there's episodes dedicated to it if you want to hear this. But I think we have a particular problem with YouTube. It is a toxic cesspool of clickbait one-upism. And it's compounded by adpocalypse and constant demonetization that forces people to continue to pivot, to try to flail around and find a new way to get people's attention and prey on their emotions so that way they can click on a YouTube video and somebody can monetize that click for a penny. And it's the other, at the same time, there is competition inherent in the platform because there's multiple people that are trying to cover these topics. You've noticed that probably, if you are on YouTube, you've noticed, really since we ended last, Jupiter Broadcasting has been significantly pulling back on YouTube. And the rationale has been because I think it's toxic and I think it's damaging to the open source community because of its inherent nature of how the system works. It's designed to encourage clickbait because of the way the YouTube algorithm works. It's designed to encourage people to try to elicit an emotional click. But the other problem is, and this is a secret that Google doesn't really like to tell you because it's really bad for ads. But anybody who creates content for YouTube for a little while, and I've been doing it for about 10 years, I've been posting to YouTube, so I have some standing here. A huge portion of the audience on YouTube is kids. And I'm grateful you guys are watching. This isn't me saying, hey, kids suck. It's just saying the reality is a huge portion of the YouTube audience is children. Not all of them are logged in, but it's a huge percentage. And especially on the large YouTubers, like your Roman Atwoods, your Casey Neistats, your large channels where they get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views, a ginormous percentage of that Google does not want you to know about because, again, that doesn't play well to advertisers, is children. When you remove the child metric from YouTube, what's left, the adults, well, you have to realize that now these people that are making videos about Linux and open source are serving to a very small niche of YouTube already, the adults. And then it's a niche within that niche of people who care about Linux and open source and are willing to watch production values that tend to vary and people who tend to be varying presenters talk about these topics. That's like a super double, triple niche, right? Now we're way down the stack. And so these people that are creating these videos are really fighting for a small number of audience on YouTube. And I would argue it's a number that is actually too small for them to successfully monetize. So we have this really toxic nature where they're competing against each other because you only have so much time in the day to watch a YouTube video. They're competing against an algorithm that's a total black box. And it drives clickbait nature of content creators to put something out there that I just need you to watch because I have to grow my audience, because unless I'm getting about 25,000 views per video, I can't really monetize this, especially if I'm living anywhere on either side of the east or west coast of the United States. You got to get around 25, 30,000 views per video to make a decent living. That's not accounting for adpocalypse. That's not accounting for demonetization. So don't say a bad word. It's a very, very difficult landscape. And it pushes people to do things like call a Linux distro spyware simply because it's checking how many people have installed Firefox. And it creates this negative momentum and this negative discussion and this confirmation bias that you see then spread throughout discussion forums, like Reddit, like Telegram. Go ahead. I'm done.
I was going to say, do you think that Deepin was looked at more closely because it originates from China?
Yeah.
And do you think that that betrays the content provider's mentality?
Yeah, and maybe the people that all got their pitchforks as well, although I could easily see it happening to Ubuntu, especially if Canonical hadn't been fully out ahead of, hey, in 6 months, we're going to start collecting some basic metrics that we should have been collecting all along. If Canonical had messaged that ahead of time, it would have, and you guys, that's why Canonical messaged it, right? Because it would have been a huge controversy.
Yes, but I just feel that, that there is a mentality which is because something comes from China, it should be eyed with suspicion first.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely true.
I'm not saying that I subscribe to that, by the way. I think that it's actually a rather dangerous position, a default position to have. But I feel that Deepin has been picked out in this way more than once in the past by a similar group of content makers on YouTube.
There is a common theme that something that comes from China, it's like cheap Chinese rubbish. Yet what a lot of people forget is they also buy expensive Chinese stuff. Like, their very expensive device that they fondle all day, every day, was almost certainly made in the Far East. And that's okay, but it's the cheap Chinese rubbish that's terrible. And decrying everything as cheap Chinese crap because they can buy something cheap on Alibaba. But it turns out it's actually cheap to manufacture something over there. That doesn't mean it's all crap, right?
Yeah.
And the same goes for software. Just because there's a vast number of developers over there creating software at low cost doesn't make it inherently rubbish. Yes, they might make mistakes, so does everyone. Nobody in any of those threads on Reddit is perfect. None of them have ever not made a mistake in their life and never been found out and then everything's okay. Everyone makes mistakes, right? And these people made a mistake. There's a communication barrier between our Western YouTube friends and those guys over in the Far East.
Yes.
And I think there's a massive misinterpretation of basically what was in essence like Google Analytics that everyone has turned on unless they've got an ad blocker, and everyone uses, yet it's not okay for them to use it over there because they are them. That's why.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much that.
It does feel, and you see it too, it's not just China. A lot of people don't trust Telegram because it comes from Russia, and that's reason enough to be skeptical of it.
But that's just as bad because it doesn't come from Russia. It's not like Russia is one.
That's how it's seen. That is how it is seen.
Exactly. It's one guy who happens to be Russian who made that thing. Russia is a effing huge place with a lot of people in it that do lots of different things. One guy happens to be Russian, doesn't make all of Telegram bad. Yes. There are other things that make Telegram bad, but it's not that.
Yeah, I think, Poby, you nailed it on the head right there. I couldn't say it better myself. And so maybe that's part of what gets me going about it, is this sort of insidious thing that sort of creeps in. You don't even realize it's what's driving your motivation. And it just seems so damaging in the open source community. I guess part of it comes, I got another email this week from, I don't know if he's a well-known developer, but the project is well-known. And he's quitting because of just feeling like the most common thread in there is this awful sense of entitlement and this sort of inflexibility in respecting like the fact that I'm a human being. And it's just it's really sad to see that.
I can't agree more with that sentiment. You know, the other thing that some of these YouTube videos and other outlets on Reddit is this huge sense of entitlement. You know, I'm just going to dogpile on this thing that you make in your spare time for the love of it. You know, I'm going to criticize it like it's a professional project. I'm gonna build my own profile off the back of, you know, shit posting about whatever Linux distribution or whatever application it is that you think you've got superior opinions on.
Yeah.
And it is extremely demoralizing for the people that invest huge amounts of time in a positive way to actually try and create something for anyone to use free of charge in open source, and then to have it shit on by you know, a bunch of monkeys in Reddit is really disheartening. And it does make you think twice sometimes. You know, I'm sat here this evening whilst we're talking in another window. I'm fixing the last of the bugs that are, you know, blockers for release next week. And I've been doing that to the early hours of the morning for several weeks now, and I'm pretty tired. And when you see posts like that in the corners of the internet where these discussions run, it really turns you off, you know, putting the effort in.
Yeah. I find a super irony it too. So people that are sort of stuck in this cycle of trying to create crazy content so that way they can build audience, so that way they can reach sustainability, it's sort of like pissing in your own well. And they're devastating. They have devastating consequences on people that are working on a passion project, that are doing something that fulfills them. And then these people come along and they just devastate them. And the irony is, how fulfilling must their work be if they're creating content like this that is just this shit content, these shit posts? They can't be proud of themselves. They can't be fulfilled by this. And so the very thing that's probably robbing them of fulfillment, they use to take away from somebody who has found something that gives them fulfillment. It's sick.
Yeah. Really, it's not good for anyone.
It's the smug attitude that you see, you know, in the comments and some of the content. It's, well, you know, I'm making a funny now by you know, pointing out this thing that I've found, and it's just like, well, if that's the best you've got to contribute to open source, I'd rather you weren't a part of it and you shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I have found that it's not everywhere. And it's not like I wouldn't say most of these things about anyone in the Jupiter Broadcasting audience. I have had so many wonderful interactions. People, you know, I get notes from people that just say, "Thanks for working as hard as you do. Thanks for doing what you do." You know, and I get a lot of that. I mean, yeah, I get haters too, but I get a lot of that. But there are corners where it's really prevalent, and it seems to be areas where there's a lot of incentives around getting as many clicks as possible, whether it's upvotes or ad revenue. Wherever those dynamics come to play, it just seems to be really toxic for open source. I don't know. I think we've made this point enough, but it's something I've been thinking about watching this go down with Deepin. Because, you know, I see this go across my radar, and it's like, how do I treat this? Is this a news story? I don't want to even give this legitimacy. Now, if there was legitimately like spying taking place, I absolutely would cover that. But when it's this sort of roughshod, no fact-based opinion
it really
stuff,
breaks the trust that is oftentimes kind of the heart of the open source community.
This is also a big problem when it's stuff that comes from Microsoft. And I can say that as somebody who was one of the worst offenders in this regard for many, many years. So I understand where a lot of people are coming from. Hold on, we got a dog bark. What happened? Did somebody knock? Guard dog. Guard dog.
Hey, that dog's on top of it.
He is. That's Levi. Levi's barking at Microsoft. Wes is good at the dog whispering though. Beep 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 beep. Situation under control?
Under control.
Everything good, Levi? No? You want to come sniff the mic or anything? Come here. Come here for a second. Come here and say hi to me for a second. Come here. Oh, yeah. Come here. Say hi. Come say hi. You want to sniff the microphone? Oh, yeah, you just got grunts? You just got grunts? Okay. You smell good. All right, doggy. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep, Levi. Levi's best studio move is to sleep. That's my favorite Levi mode.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yep,
He's so cute.
Yeah, he's good at it. He is
Curled up in a little ball.
He is good at it. So I'm going to make a quick edit note here real quick. During end of discussion about Reddit and YouTube being total shitholes, we pause for dog bark.
Make sure to highlight Levi's bark.
Yeah, I pick it up talking about. All right, so see about 50-20, the raw recording. Okay. Making notes for our new mysterious editor, who has not really named to remain too mysterious as I talk out loud. Okay, so here we go. We'll pick it. Picking that back up in a 3, in a 2. I kind of feel like we do this with stuff from Microsoft too. Like it came from China, it came from Russia, it came from Microsoft, so therefore we're automatically skeptical. And it was in full force this week when Microsoft announced Azure Sphere, which is a multi-part component, but the most headline-grabbing component is the fact that there's an OS involved that uses the Linux kernel. And I have seen everything from this is now everybody, actually the most common thing I have seen is this is Microsoft embracing and extinguishing Linux. They've begun the extinguish phase and everybody's jumping to 11 on this one. So we decided let's actually talk to the people behind the project and figure out what's going on. And so we discussed with a couple of folks from Microsoft that are involved in building the product, what it is, what's going on, what kind of Linux, what are they using it for, what's the hardware, all of that stuff. And so we'll share with what we picked up, or does that make sense? We'll share what we learned.
We got the deets.
But first, let's mention Linux Academy. It's linuxacademy.com/unplugged. You go there to sign up for a free 7-day trial and support the show. It's a platform to learn more about Linux, and once you sign up, you get unlimited access. And they're about to add a whole bunch of new stuff in the month of April. 70 new courses, challenges, learning activities. It breaks down like this. 20 new courses as well as some content refreshes, 50 new cloud assessments, hands-on learning activities, and new challenges baked in, as well as taking advantage of their new real-time grader platform so you can get feedback as you're learning.
Ooh-wee.
Isn't that great?
That is.
Yeah, so go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged, sign up for the free 7-day trial, you support the show, and then check it out. They got hands-on scenario-based labs, they spin up servers on demand, you pick the distro, it adjusts the courseware and the servers, they have full-time human beings that can help you if you ever get stuck. If you're busy, they got a course schedule, it'll work with your busy schedules, and they got Learning Paths, which are a series of content and courseware planned by instructors for specific career tracks. Now, you combine that with all the new content they're rolling out in the month of April, it's never been a better time to sign up. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. You can also try out the iOS and Android app, the flashcards, which are forked by the community, and the tiny bits of wisdom that they call nuggets that go deep dives into single topics. Like you want to learn file permissions on Linux. You want to learn firewalling. You want to learn basic networking and ports on Linux. They have deep dives into those specific topics. Other topics too, including some development ones at Linux Academy as well.
I love me some nuggets.
And Mexi Fries, as we had little Mexi Fries with lunch too. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Go there, sign up for a free 7-day trial, and try out the full featured training library with everything you need to learn new skills and advance your career. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Big thanks to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Unplugged program. So help me not mistake the pronunciation of the primary gentleman that we spoke with. Was it Galen?
Galen Hunt.
Yeah, it was Galen Hunt. And Galen is the author of a whole line of publications of papers that came out of Microsoft that if you read them would almost kind of give you a clue of where they were going with all of this. Like the hint was out there. like the one that was published last year, the 7 properties of highly secure devices, or challenges to building scalable services. And the background is, you could see that there's been a lot of thought that went into this. So Wes and I wanted to be able to talk on some level of authority of what Azure Sphere is and how Linux is being used by Microsoft. And so Azure Sphere, think of it as something that really has 3 aspects. Overall, it's a solution for companies that are building single-chip computer products, devices that are often even smaller than a Raspberry Pi. You know, truly like the toasters and the hair dryers that haven't yet been connected to Wi-Fi, but are just about to be.
Right, things that are running like just little microcontrollers now, maybe real-time operating systems, not big, full-featured things.
Yeah, we were joking, but actually very realistically, things like those Bluetooth sous vides and whatnot.
Exactly.
It's really happening. And Microsoft estimates that there's probably 10 billion units around the world like this. I think that might have been a yearly number, too, that gets sold. Lower-end devices that, you know, you just don't traditionally think of, but they would sometimes have like a real-time operating system on there. Azure Sphere is stepping in here. They're sort of making a product for these manufacturers, a full end-to-end product to run on these devices. So it's 3 aspects, and this is where it starts to make sense. You've probably heard of the new MCUs, these machines that are a system all on this one slab. It's part of a hardware solution that vendors will be able to use. It'll also be available as a dev kit later on. And they've built in some of the similar hardware checks that they have in the Xbox. They took that like hardware root of trust. Each device has its own secured identity. It uses secure boot capabilities. It verifies that the device software installed is legitimate. And it's also possible to check in with the server and have server-side and client-side checks as well. Microsoft's going to be licensing that silicon. And I didn't quite get the license out of them, but it sounds like it's going to be pretty liberal.
And royalty-free.
Yeah. Yep. And the second bit is, so this Azure Sphere is 3 parts. That's part 1, the hardware part. The second bit is the OS. This is where Linux sits. It's a multi-layered OS. And the reason why they call it that is there's a lower level that's doing the hardware and software verification. The second layer is the Linux kernel. And we pushed them for some details on this, and they shared it with us. It's using Linux kernel 4.9, and Wes asked them specifically, are you going to be tracking upstream kernel releases? Is it based on another project? Is this a derivative distro? It is upstream Linux kernel 4.9, and they said they're going to be aggressively tracking.
Aggressively, that was their term.
Yeah, aggressively tracking upstream with that. And so I asked, so what are you using Linux for specifically? And they kind of shy away from this a bit, because to them it's just part of like a 3-part solution. I know that sounds so corporate, but that's really how they see it. Linux is sort of just like this enabling technology stack. It's not like this huge come to Jesus over the GPL. It's just simply a practical implementation. It's practical.
Yeah, it wasn't designed around Linux. Linux isn't a focus. Linux was just a tool that fit into the architecture.
So we said, so how are you using Linux? And so they're using process isolation via the Linux kernel, and they're using sandboxes for all the apps, and they're using the kernel features built into 4.9 for sandboxing. And of course, they're using the networking stack and the disk IO stack. So they're using the base elements. And I said, okay, well, honestly here, is this something that you guys just slammed in because you realized you couldn't get Windows down on these real-time devices, or was Linux baked in from the very beginning when you started this project? And the answer was, we started this project 4 years ago, and Linux was, from day one, part of the solution. From day one, they were going to use Linux. And then so that's the second middle layer of Azure Sphere. And then there's the third part to Azure Sphere. And that is the part that actually is on Azure, really. It's the Azure Sphere Security Service. It's a cloud service that can reach out to every device that has a security Azure Sphere chip in it. That's part of the MCU. It uses certificate-based authentication for authentication to the cloud, and it allows for device-to-device communication directly using these certificates. And it also includes the ability to collect crash metrics of applications, which Microsoft is planning to aggregate across the entire Azure Sphere ecosystem, so that way they can, at large scale, see if all of a sudden a lot of devices are getting this port banged on, or this application is crashing on a lot of systems. But on top of that, they can give those metrics back anonymized to the hardware manufacturers, and they can see how their devices are failing. And then the last part of the hosted part of Azure Sphere is a software update channel that Microsoft will host and manage for them, but the vendor will have a secure channel to ship software updates, and Microsoft will run support for 10 years. They will support these Linux-based IoT devices and give vendors a channel to ship updates and give them metrics for 10 years. They have an SDK coming soonish, probably like summertime. It's going to include a dev kit board, hooks up via USB, and then you can start banging on it.
Even Visual Studio integration. So
Yeah.
it sounds like a pretty decent development environment.
So the core problem they're really solving is hardware manufacturers that say want to make a sous vide, a Bluetooth sous vide, or a Wi-Fi sous vide machine, or a crock pot. They don't have to now build a whole server infrastructure to manage incoming requests, set up a REST API, set up push services, build out through data centers all around the world so that way they can have low latency connections, and then have an on-staff software team that ships out updates and looks and analyzes logs and ships out fixes. Microsoft is now doing all of that. They're figuring out the inter-device communication security, they're figuring out how to push out the software updates, and they're even using a Linux kernel for the actual low-end hardware devices. It is truly like you want to make an IoT device product, GE? Well, here's Azure Sphere. We'll take care of the silicon, we'll take care of the software updates, we'll take care of the metrics, and we'll take care of 10 years of support channel for you. You just have to figure out the product and figure out what you want to do with it, and we'll handle the back-end stuff. Seems like that's going to be a big, big thing. And you tie it in with Azure, which is all over the world. Microsoft will probably price it extremely aggressively to get people to try it.
Right, yeah, I'm sure. And then, then it's so easy. Oh, you'll host other things in Azure as well, of course.
Yeah. And fascinating that from day one, 4 years ago, Linux.
I thought what was another part that was interesting was that, a large part of that was that their vendors, their silicon partners, they already knew Linux, and Linux was open source. It was easy for them to experiment, to take Microsoft's code and iterate on it, make improvements, ship them back, share them. Kind of speaks to the things we like about Linux.
I don't know if they would characterize it this way, but my personal takeaway from our call was they were surprised how much attention the Linux aspect has gotten. They didn't see that coming because, and they're kind of paraphrasing, they're like, well, we've been shipping Linux on switches in Azure, and Linux is a massively growing aspect for that end of our business. So when it comes to Azure, Linux has been part of their business for a long time, and it's totally normal to them. They're not even surprised by it. So they weren't quite expecting the amount of reaction it got because their mindset has been, well, yeah, of course we're using Linux, which was weird for us to kind of get up to speed on because because they were like, I don't know why everybody's so surprised by this. And we're like, really, guys? You're shipping a Linux-based OS now? And like, well, this is the Azure team. This is what we do. Like, okay.
Yeah, and from that perspective, it does make sense. And yeah, it fits. It was the right tool at the right time in the right place, and good on them.
Yeah, I suppose so. And they talk about, so you'll hear in the announcements, Microsoft has put certain Windows security technologies into their version of Linux. You may have read some version of that in the press releases. And we said, what is that? What are these Windows security techniques that you're now applying to Linux? And predominantly, it was around the crash reporting, the Windows crash reporter, tying that into their existing infrastructure for that. But also came down to like a couple, the way they designed some of the permissions. You remember there was like a third thing that they took from Windows. It didn't seem like a huge deal, but I didn't note it down. But the crash metrics collection, the way they're slipstreaming the updates in to be low bandwidth so that way they can slip updates in, they're using that same system they use for Windows 10 to do that, it sounded like.
Yes, right.
That's what it was. So anyways, kind of a compelling offer. I didn't ask them this, but when I first heard the announcement, I was a little surprised it wasn't based on an existing distro, like your Ubuntu Core or something to that degree. I was a little surprised that they decided to roll their own. But when you hear about the other stuff they've wrapped around it, I think I can understand why.
Yeah, and it may be, that these devices are special purpose enough that you don't need a full-featured regular sort of user land, and you're tightly...
Yeah, the kernel really sounds like an enabling piece of technology. Yeah. It's not like the core aspect of these devices. It's just a sub-aspect of three parts of a component, really. But a big turn of events for Microsoft, either way, from where I sit, it seems like a big deal to me. And they went out of their way to make sure it was clear to us, including setting up a conference call. Why I think they said they were at a conference, an RSA call.
They're at the RSA conference right now.
So they grabbed a room and they got a group of people from the Azure team in a room and got on a phone call with us. Well, that's why we didn't do an interview, but they got on a phone call with us and let us just bang questions at them for a half hour about this thing. And I walked away feeling pretty impressed. I went in not really understanding what's going on, wondering, is this embrace and extinguish? But I walked out of it with those takeaways that I just shared with you.
Yeah, I mean, it really seems like they are motivated. They see the business case for all the terrible IoT things that already exist in the world and why that needs to be fixed.
Yeah,
whether or not it's going to be adopted, I don't know, but it might be a good thing if it is.
I wouldn't be too surprised if Microsoft doesn't have success working directly with like fridge manufacturers, and they can do that big business to big business. And they're already in on so many different devices, and some of these devices have tried to ship versions of Windows embedded, and now they can just shift those hardware partners over to this, possibly. I don't know. See the live streams? Oh, there we go. Live stream's back. So there you go.
I've used Ubuntu Mate.
I should have. You're right. I'm waiting for 1804, and then I'm either going to do Kubuntu 1804 or Ubuntu Mate on our OBS rig. I haven't decided if I'm just going to go all in on Kubuntu. It just seems, I know I've talked about it too much. I talk about it every time this machine crashes, actually.
Yes, you do. So multiple times per week.
Yeah. But now that we're recording this multi-track audio, normally it would disrupt the show. Well, I mean, it has disrupted the show, but not for the reasons it normally does. So we can just move right along. Anyways, I was really thankful, and I extended them an offer to come on the show down the road if we have more questions. So if you have some questions or comments, leave it either where you're watching or linuxunplugged.com/contact. Is there anything from the Mumble Room, any questions or thoughts about Microsoft shipping a Linux distro? That's kind of a big development in itself. I mean, I guess it's not fair to call it a distro, but a Linux-powered product, I guess we could say.
I think Linus Torvalds says he won.
Yeah, that famous quote, when Microsoft starts making applications for Linux, I've won. Yeah. And there was a real, just practicalness in their mind. They just thought, for these ROT devices, these really kind of lower-end real-time operating system devices, Linux was just a better fit. And then you have to wonder, would they have done this if the last few years of work on containers and sandboxing hadn't been going in the Linux kernel? Because those are some of the core features they're using to secure the applications that run on these devices.
Right, you need a certain amount of those primitives available so that you can build. If you're trying to build a secure OS, you need to be able to achieve that goal.
Yeah, and if those weren't there, they wouldn't have had that goal. Minimac, you have a point about sort of the future, the way of the future.
Yeah, see, with all these changes they did, the last thing, meaning restructuring the whole company, it looks like they want to be a service provider in the future. So selling software is not that important. Selling services, that makes money.
We've been talking on the Coder radio program, Coder.show, about Microsoft sort of becoming the new IBM. And it started about 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, when we did a retrospective look at Sun Microsystems and their influence on the IT industry, their influence on Android and Java. And that retrospective then got us talking about IBM, which we did last week. And at the end of our retrospective of IBM, sort of at its heyday in the 80s, we realized that Microsoft is very much getting to a new version. My co-host Michael calls it a platonic ideal of what IBM wanted to be, is what Microsoft is becoming. I don't know. I'm watching all of these events, and you go into it with, at least I can't help, because I came up during the good old wars of Microsoft and Windows and Linux. I mean, that was the fire I was raised in.
You were raised, yeah, exactly.
So when I see these stories, that, oh man, this is embrace and extinguish, does go across my mind. And I have to really sort of just take a moment and be self-aware and go, okay, well, that's an emotional reaction.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's an emotional reaction. Be mindful, and what could this really be? And I think what's deeper is what we are witnessing is that Microsoft is going to become one of the handful of companies that has successfully, and I mean very successfully, monetized Linux and open source. And we have a hard time with that in the open source Linux community. We don't like people making money. You know, we have a few handful of blessed companies like Red Hat that will even celebrate when they make money. They're allowed to make money. But otherwise, you're not really allowed to make money in Linux. And so when Microsoft is becoming one of the clear leaders of people making a profit off of Linux and open source, I think it doesn't sit well with us. I think below all of this is, what if one of the companies at the end of this war, everything we fought for, at the end of all of it, when all is said and done, the company that's making the most money off of Linux or making some of the most money is Microsoft. I think that's what's really bothering people. Is they shouldn't be allowed. They fought us the whole way. They shouldn't be allowed to have this. This is ours. But they're a smart company with a lot of smart people, and they made some smart changes, and now they're going to be one of the number one moneymakers off Linux. You see, they don't have to destroy Linux. They don't have to take over Linux. They don't have to convince the Linux Foundation to slow down development or any conspiracy theory that people cook and bake and come up with, because they can make money off Linux just the way it is, and they're making more money than ever. And the GPL will keep Linux. That's done. The GPL is done. GPL 2, unless they convince Linus to relicense, I think we're pretty much safe here. And so what we really got to wrap our heads around is that Microsoft is going to be one of the biggest moneymakers off of Linux. And we got to think about how that makes us feel. And maybe if that's what's influencing our reaction to some of this. Not to be...
Are they better at Linux than we are?
Yeah, I mean, that's just it, right? That's the... Not to be Mr. Linux podcast psychologist here, but I think that's at play a little bit. Because it's unsettling. You're not allowed to make money off of Linux. You fought us on this. You called it a cancer. But we all know that things change. And this Azure Sphere, shipping Linux at the core of it, may be just the tip of the iceberg. Think about that for a second. If .NET Core, Visual Studio Code, all of those things have been brewing in the background for years, 4 years. And then PowerShell Core comes out, another 4 years. And now we've heard of this, Azure Sphere, using a Linux kernel, about 4 years in development. Something big happened at Microsoft. Well, we know what happened, but 4 or 5 years ago, all those stories about Satya taking over, we heard about the top echelon of management getting reorged. But just like how it always goes, the actual worker bees down below, people that got moved, fired, shuffled around, we didn't hear about them. But that's where some of this work started. Down in the bowels of Microsoft, where lots of reorgs happened that didn't make the headlines. And that's the hard part we're having a hard time wrapping our heads around when it comes to how Microsoft is behaving now. Is because we've seen Satya, we've seen the top layers, because those are people on their websites. And when they make changes, they got to update the website. They make a press announcement. But when you're 10 managers down the chain and you're working on some prototype product, and that doesn't make headlines. So it's a different Microsoft too. So it's a Microsoft that's learned how to make money off Linux and open source, and it's a different internal beast that we haven't really learned yet. We have so many decades of experience with the old configuration, but now we're dealing with Microsoft in a totally different configuration.
Yeah, they're not as static of an entity as we want to think that they are, right?
I mean, I feel like an old version of Microsoft would have figured out a way to cram NT on this, or would have crammed some BSD that they didn't even have to name on there. There just would have been a hard line. It's clear something deep down changed.
Right, yeah, clearly the leadership doesn't object. There's not this entrenched resistance, at least doesn't seem to be.
And it doesn't feel like it's the light of Stallman either. It's just simply...
It's just practical.
You got to wonder if they're sitting around the boardroom going, I wonder if we could make more money at this Linux stuff than Red Hat.
Yeah, right.
You think we could make more money than Red Hat? Let's give it a go. That's what's going on. It's good old capitalism. And then we're sitting back going, what the hell? A Linux kernel... Embrace and extinguish. Embrace and extinguish.
But maybe now we'll be seeing, security-related patches blowing from Microsoft upstream. Who knows?
Yeah. Weird. Yeah, especially if they start shipping a lot of these things. Going to be a lot of Linux kernels out there. And how are they going to do 10 years of support?
That's a huge commitment.
I guess that's just something else I'd like to follow up with them is, are they going to run their own internal forks? Because you're going to have to do your own LTS.
Or are they just going to be updated a lot? Is this going to be like a continuous
keep them
deployment
current
style? Yeah.
So they'll be on 5.0 in a few weeks.
Maybe not that current.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. We also don't know like quite what the licensing is going to be around the Silicon yet. We don't know like what because they're going to also release the specs. We don't really have a clear picture. They said royalty free, but we don't really have a clear picture. And all that. Like, will you be able to even design applications for it from Linux? We don't know. We don't know. All that is still to be determined. But it was something. It was really something to see that. I did not expect that story this week. Did not see that coming. All right, guys. Well, is there anything else we need to cover before we get out of here this week? Mention the Ubuntu podcast.
Nope.
We got to do that. Ubuntu
We sure
podcast.
do.
Go get more Popey and Wimpy over there. Good show. And yeah, okay. I'll go get more West Payne, techsnap.systems. How about that? Bam. Should plug our own stuff too. I like it when we do that. Okay, everybody. Well, we'll get out of here. Thank you for joining us. If you want to join us on a Tuesday, you're more than welcome. We do this show live over at jblive.tv. Usually the live stream kicks off around 1:30 p.m. Pacific. You can get it converted at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Then you hang out, you join us, and then kick back and enjoy the Alex Noah show, which comes just right after this show.
Bonus show.
And then
That's
go
how
get
much we love you.
And then go get more. Just go get more. Just more
Always
JV.
more.
There's more
Always.
shows. LinuxUnplugged.com. There's more there. JupiterBroadcasting.com. There's more there. There's always
Tech
more.
Talk Today.
Yeah, TechTalk.today. All right, thanks for being here. We'll see you right back here next Tuesday. You know, ironically, I think most people catch the show like on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I really shouldn't say see you next Tuesday.
Yeah,
Just see you next week. See you next week. What do we call this thing, guys? We covered a lot of things. Thank you, everybody, for contributing. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the heck out of the show.
Extend and extinguish. Boom. Done. Title chosen.
Extend and extinguish, huh? That's not bad. That is not bad. I'm sure that would get a few clicks. I'm going to submit it. jbtitles.com. Go boat.
Can you give me a bit of YouTube consultancy, Chris?
Sure.
Can you create multiple channels under a single like Google
Yes.
account? How the
Yes, I have it.
How the heck do you do it?
You know what I do differently is I have different Google accounts and then I have them all logged in. And, you can use a little switcher. That works better for me. Because then you can just go in and add them as managers to the individual YouTube channels. But yes, that's how I do it. So I have like I have Chris at Jupiter Broadcasting. I have my personal one, and then we have a couple of like behind the scenes channels. Those are all different Gmail logins. And then I've logged into the browser and I just switch up in the little YouTube thingy.
Okay, but I don't want another Google account.
So what's your trick, Popey?
I'm trying to figure it out because I did it a long time ago, and I can see them both there.
Yeah,
in the Creator Studio.
I think there used to be a way to do it through Google Plus, and I don't think you can. I don't know. There's some functionality that they used to do through Google Plus they've removed now, and they haven't replaced it. But I can't remember what it was. Azure goes Linux. That happened a long time ago though. Azure as a service. How much Linux is in that Windows? The bonds of Azure. It came from Redmond. What did I submit on your behalf? I forgot. You had something. Oh yeah, embrace and extinguish.
Maybe one called Lindos.
The end of embrace and extinguish.
Maybe. Well, Chris, I just booted a USB off of Ubuntu Mate on my Mac. It's scaling like perfectly. The only thing that doesn't work, the only thing that I'm complaining about is the lack of Broadcom freaking compatibility.
Oh yeah, well that's always the thing on the MacBook.
Yeah,
That's always
inevitable.
a pain in the butt on the MacBook.
You're welcome.
Yeah. ThinkPad, my friend. ThinkPad.
So the scaling's all good on your Mac though, yeah?
Yes, Wimpy. I
Good.
just wish you guys would freaking add in Broadcom support immediately.
Well,
I
we
gotta
can't.
tell ya.
No, that's not going to happen. That's not. I'm sure if they could snap the old fingers and they'd be in there.
Right.
I seem to remember for the 1704 release, we did everything we could to enable every Broadcom device that we are able to enable. So it has improved. But those older Macs, they're blobs, and we can't be doing that. I'm afraid.
There's blobs and there's nothing we can do. You know,
Well, at
the
least
blob.
So, could he try the backports possibly?
There's a firmware cutting tool, and if you look on the Ubuntu wiki, you'll find instructions on how to do
I
this.
do know that the hardware drivers program that the Ubuntu distros ship with does install it. So all I have to do is plug in my phone or an Ethernet cable, and my phone can act as an Ethernet device, and it won't take me that long to download it.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so that way I can just pop it to the hardware driver. I've done it before, and then it's fixed, so it's not a big deal.
So I guess it's smiley news, and you won't have to call in on Us Know again.
The long saga of Ben's MacBook, which crosses Linux Unplugged and the Ask Noah show now.
well, this is Unplugged post show.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
well, it's
true.
not such a big deal. So yeah, I think calling about that won't happen for a good while now.
So.
I think the only question now is to get like a Debian package download, just in case if like that package does not come in through the hardware drivers setting.
Let me change topics here for a second, because I want to pick your guys' brain. I have a little birdie telling me that an XPS 13 review unit may land on my doorstep in the next couple of weeks.
Is that
now
the thin one with the USB-C ports?
Yeah, he's probably your used one, Popey.
Yeah, totally.
I was very good with it. I polished it and wrapped it all up just like it was new.
Actually, it may be. Like, is there any identifying marks on there I should look for? Was it a high DPI or a standard? I can't remember. I think you got the standard.
I
did.
To our amazing review.
I did, but I seem to recall you got the standard DPI screen, but I don't remember for some reason.
We got the best model in my opinion. So we got the one with the 1080p screen, but with the 16 gig memory uplift. My personal opinion is on the XPS 13, that 13.3 inch display, 1080p, super crisp, and then you get the benefit of the enhanced battery endurance using that 1080p display rather than a UHD display.
Yeah. I think I should ask for that. I think I should get that.
This is the thin one with only USB-C ports.
No, I think it has regular ports still. It just has USB-C in addition. They're not monsters.
Well, I mean, there are more USB-C ports and very, very thin.
It is those things. That's true. Those are true statements about it. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm just kind of figuring, like, what's a new take on a laptop review? You know, that's what I'm trying to think of. So if you guys have any ideas, let me know on a new take. I'll probably, try all the different smattering of distros and different functions, but...
Take it to the beach.
Take it to the beach?
Yeah.
Take it to the beach, work a day at the beach.
Yeah.
Definitely trackpad.
Yeah, definitely trackpad. Yeah. I'm just curious. We have time to think about it. I think it'll be a few weeks, but if people have ideas, I'd love to know.
And for the record, I'm still a dual booter, but I haven't gone into Windows in a very long time, so I'm not sure how many package updates I would have if I booted back into there.
Sometimes that's my favorite thing to do, is just log in and update all the packages. I just love doing that.
I have a laptop I'm reviewing at the moment, and I like the sticker on the bottom because the sticker has the brand name of the laptop, and underneath it says "Welcome to Freedom."
That's great. You don't want to spoil who it is, though?
Yeah, it's a KDE Slimbook.
Oh, I was thinking that might be what it was. I think. Did you mention you got that? 'Cause for some reason I thought you might have picked that up, or somebody in your circle I thought did. I've been tempted by that just to try it out, so I'm glad you'll be reviewing it just to see what you think. Because I don't think it's one I'm going to buy, but I'd love to hear how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to get a machine that has something different. That's like it comes shipped with KDE Neon and it's all set up and great out of the box. It's lovely.
Slimbook's a UK OEM ODM.
No, they're based in Spain.
Okay.
Spanish.
Slimbooks are Spanish, and I get to meet them again next week because I'm going to UbuCon Europe in Spain, and they will be exhibiting there.
Oh,
is there going to be jamon?
Yeah. Sorry,
I've got it for a few days.
Is there going to be jamon?
Almost certainly. There is actually a social event in the mountains in an outdoor restaurant.
Oh man, I wish I was seeing at least one of you guys at Linux Fest Northwest this year.
Yeah,
we'll be so sad.
So UbuCon is going to be the FOSS MWC.
No.
It's a Ubuntu community event. Loads of people from, well, not just Europe, but around the world get together in one place, give a load of talks about Ubuntu and surrounding technologies, and we have social events and just generally have a banging good time.
I was just comparing.
Yeah, it's nothing like MWC.
Yeah, but the Hamon's probably the same. It's a joke on another podcast that I participate in, so...
I'm surprised we haven't seen that Ask Noah character yet. Usually he pops in about this time.
He's a
He might be
sneaky
having
devil.
issues.
Oh yeah, why
His
is it?
wireless isn't working.
I love that there's still some.
That's amazing.
It's still a little bit of a hot nerve still.
About that.
Still,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm still salty about that.
That was great. I liked it.
Right, I need to go to bed.
All right, thank you for joining us.
Sleep
Good night,
well.
Popey.
Later.
Good night.
We still need to title this monster.
Yeah, we do need to title this thing. That is true.
By the way, anybody in this room proficient with 3D models and all that?
Nope, not by a long shot.
As in like 3D printing and scanning?
Nope.
No, not yet. Maybe one day.
I am myself 3D, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our school just recently got a new creative technology lab where you can scan items and print
good.
items in 3D.
Neat.
Oh man, that's cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
and I just got this panel on my phone case scanned completely. It's just the only thing is it's lopsided when I try to upload it into into one of those services where they can actually print it out for you. I don't have a 3D printer at my residence, nor I'm not sure if the printers in the school are proficient enough to what the materials I would want for my case back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a whole new world of problems.
Consider installing Octopi and that.
Octopi.
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 Octoprint is the open source sort of print control software, and Octopi is basically a Pi distribution for it for controlling open source 3D printers. So you get monitoring as well as being able to control it remotely, as well as webcams and stuff.
Well, unfortunately, this school is still using proprietary software at this moment.
Doesn't really matter so long as it's got a USB port, you can Raspberry Pi can pretty work with it.
Yeah, but the support thing is we're under a support contract with a certain entity.
Man. So you're saying it's like a complicated.
It's a complicated relationship.
Oh man, he has quotes for
yes.
everything, doesn't he?
Yep.
He just interrupts me constantly with that Richard Stallman.
Sort of. It's a little discouraging. I sort of talk about it on occasion on Ask Noah, like how the saga of me asking, hey, why can't we use Linux on here?
Yeah.
We have a contract.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not too
That's a
uncommon.
shame.
That's not unheard of. Not unheard of at all.
Proprietary software keeps users divided and helpless.
Exactly.
Some of us like it that way.
Oh
well,
man.
You can't. Well, I have discovered that I cannot use Linux and print to the school's printer system because that printer system does not have a Linux driver.
I really want to get that new NUC that's coming out soon.
Oh, there's a new NUC coming out?
Yeah, new
I
NUC.
have news about that new NUC.
You do? You do?
Yeah,
We should have put that in the show.
Well, here you go. An exclusive just for you.
All right.
So yeah, Intel have been in touch to say that the pre-orders are delayed until mid-May now.
Oh.
So they got some wrinkles that they want to iron out before they ship the devices.
So I may have more time yet.
Yep. And having said that, there was an uptick in the value of Bitcoin.
I was just going to say maybe Bitcoin will go up a little bit between now and then.
So I may have splashed out on a 2 terabyte NVMe.
Oh, for the
Samsung
NUC?
960 Pro.
Oh
yeah.
no!
You shut up.
Oh, that's
so
going to be great.
I'm going to use that for the home, and I've got the same but 512 gig for the boot. And I've also, because all of the reviews are out now in the various magazines and websites and what have you.
Yeah.
If you zoom in on the pictures, you can see what Intel is shipping, memory on their review units.
Yeah.
And I figured out there's this a very high-speed version from HyperX Impact, which is DDR4 3200 as opposed to 2400. And the NUC will bump up to that higher speed. So I've ordered 32 gigs of that as well.
Good catch. Nice.
16 gigs for Ubuntu Mate and all my applications, and then another 16 gigs for Slack.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say Electron.
The question I have, though, with regards to SSD storage is are Linux distros gentler toward SSD storage compared to
probably depends more on the file
proprietary
system.
options?
It's not Linux so much, it's probably more like the file system.
Yeah, and write endurance on modern SSDs is like through the roof compared to where it was a few years ago. So it's like literally no concern now.
Yeah, I seem to remember though XFS seems to be a pretty good file system for SSDs.
Yeah, but it's
I think all but ZFS support trim now.
I thought it's a feature coming soon to ZFS.
Probably.
Yes, it's in development, but like I say, I think all of the file systems support trim now, with the exception of ZFS.
I don't think. Oh yeah, I do have one system still that has spinning rest. I do still have one, but none of my daily Linux drivers. Yeah. No, I know.
How do you even get work done?
Hey.
Slowly.
Hey.
Yeah, painfully.
NASA's use spinning hard drives at the moment.
It is good for lots of disk. Yeah. Actually, one of my main workstations does have 3 in a RAID 0, and that's usable. But it's you're playing with fire when you're doing a RAID 0 of spinning rest drives. You're playing with fire. Asking for a failure.
Although if you only have one drive bay and it's not beneficial to put in a like a SSD, would it be better to put in like a hybrid drive?
How big is those hybrid? Is that really still a thing?
There's still that Barracuda from Seagate.
Barracuda.
The gaming drives.
Boy, that's tough. I don't know. I've never actually, I don't think, used any of those extensively. Maybe I've had one ever. I just don't trust those dumb little silicons.
I think I've had other people with like laptops with them.
But. Yeah, I would put more faith in something at the OS level to do that than I would at the. But I don't know.
The thing is, there's a lot more storage on the on those hybrid drives than the SSDs.
Yeah. There's also a lot more storage in the cloud, but it's slow too.
Yeah, I just looked at the first SSD I ever bought about 10 years ago. And it was only 80 gig. It cost me heaps at the time because they were new. But I just looked at the stats on it yesterday. It's only written 30 terabytes and it's got no errors. And this is a 10-year-old SSD. It's working fine.
Yeah, I've had a couple of SSDs die on me, but I also have a couple that just are never. Yeah, they just never stop.
So I guess the first few ones were like the bad batch, and then they got better and better over time.
I've got different various ages. I know. I think the Crucial brand I've lost, but I've also got a couple cheap Crucials. I bought a lot of cheap SSDs when I was building Hackintoshes back in the day, and some of those disks are still around in like various different usage capacities. I wonder what that
this one's Intel.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, those are usually pretty good. Yeah.
Yes, Ben.
I was just gonna say to Chris, I still make Hackintoshes.
Yeah, do you? Well,
of course. Yes,
I found it to be sort of frustrating.
Isn't BSD technically an open version of a Hackintosh?
No.
No. Mac is based on Unix, not BSD.
Yeah, it has the BSD userland utilities, but it doesn't use the BSD kernel. It doesn't use their init system. It doesn't use any of that stuff.
Yeah, they got their own stuff around those lines.
Yeah.
Wait, so
everyone loves Mac.
Isn't the Hackintosh the way to get the modern hardware now?
Yeah, really, that's it. That's why you do it.
Well, I saw an article somewhere on the Apple support forums where they now support USB Thunderbolt external GPUs. So
yeah, Thunderbolt external GPUs. Yeah. I mean, so you can get a new GPU, but there's still a protocol overhead, and it's if you want a bunch of internal disk or if you want PCI cards. Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad they're doing the GPU support though. That's good.
That is nice.
Yeah.
Could you hub out a USB Thunderbolt port to multiple USB Thunderbolt ports?
Well, like for example, I have one Thunderbolt 3 cable that comes out of my MacBook that I use for editing, and it goes into a Thunderbolt 3 dock, which has like a smattering of USB-A. It has Ethernet, DisplayPort, HDMI. It has a sound card built into it. It has USB-C and Thunderbolt itself. So it's it's like basically like a breakout box of all of the ports that the thing should just have built in.
Like, so you can daisy chain. Like,
Mhm.
I think I've heard you
Yeah.
can daisy chain.
Yeah, yeah. It's similar to the way FireWire worked like that. So you could have a monitor, which is then plugged into another monitor, for example, and then you could have two displays that come back over one cord that goes into the MacBook or whatever's using USB-C. So our title options are: has Linus won or is Linux gone? That's got the #1 votes. It's long, but it's catchy. Azure goes Linux, but that I feel like
About like Linus's long game.
yeah. Embrace and Extinguish is only got 2 votes. Has Linus won or is Linux gone? Has Linus won?
Linus won years ago.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit tired, isn't it?
Yeah, and Azure Goes Linux happened years ago too. Our top 2 titles have already happened.
You just title it Linus Torvalds won when he gave NVIDIA the middle finger.
The title could be "There's Nothing New Here." Won't be good for downloads, but
History repeats itself.
From how about from Extinguish to Monetize? No, that's who wants to click on that. Nobody wants to listen to that. That sounds horrible.
yeah, monetize. Oh god.
Bang on my board.
About Embrace Microsoft.
Eesh. Oof.
Embracing Microsoft.
I'm getting to hate titles. I'm really beginning to just hate titles.
Yeah, you need a system whereby you programmatically generate them all
Yeah.
ahead of your season of podcasts.
Yes. Is that a thing? I wonder where those
Does
titles.
the title bot still work now?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at right now.
We had one for season 10, and we used an adapted version for this season for season 11.
I should really consider doing that. The other problem is that sometimes titles have a.
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, don't you think sometimes titles have an impact on downloads though? Like if you have a Mark Shuttleworth interview, don't you kind of want to title it Mark Shuttleworth interview?
We don't care.
I just.
Also, it means we can pre-generate all of our show note templates for the whole year in advance with the dates, the times, the titles, the artwork, and all of that stuff is all pre-generated in one hit. And then all we need to do, and we do in the shows, is actually slap the content in and publish it.
Jeez, that sounds like
saves
some sort of
a lot
utopia.
time.
Sounds like a utopia.
But what if there's hashtag breaking news?
Well, it's still in the show. It's still in the show. It's just...
we maybe we have to do one manually. Shock horror, but we try to avoid that at all costs.
How about Microsoft of Things?
Linux arms race. Microsoft of Things. That's pretty clever, dude. I'm going to suggest that.
I do like that, yeah.
Microsoft of Things. Internet of Microsoft Linux. Internet of Microsoft Linux isn't bad either.
Microsoft's Linux Sphere.
Internet of micro things.
Yeah, I kind of like having Microsoft in there. I kind of like that.
Microsphere, no.
Still no Ask Noah. Although we did kind of end early.
Yeah, it's a little early.
Yeah, I was expecting to have an additional guest, but it still worked out. It worked out.
By the way, is that person supposed to be his name Shri or Sri?
I don't know. I just changed it up. I think it's Sri or Shri. I'm not sure. I kind of changed it up.
Sarai,
I slur it.
I think.
Sarai. It's hard for me not to say Siri. I'm just so fucking panicked about saying Siri that I just change it up. I can't help
Does
myself.
he appear or look Indian?
Oh yes, yeah.
That is probably Shri.
Internet of micro shit. That's funny. Yeah, I can't make that a title though.
I've heard micro penis describe the company. So
Internet of Microsoft Things. I think I'm still liking Internet of Microsoft Things.
Yeah, I like
How
that
about just
too.
micro and soft?
That sounds like a phallical title. Actually, that title sounds phallical.
Phalicious.
What did I just suggest? Because now the dick title got stuck in my head. What was it? It was Microsoft of Things was already suggested, right?
Mm-hmm.
If not, I'm going to Microsoft of Things.
Yeah, it is.
Do we like Microsoft of Things or Microsoft Internet of Things? Internet, and there was also Internet of Microsoft Linux. All right, everybody's got to go to the JB Titles boat page, and we got to
Sort this
narrow
out
it
for
down
us.
because the spread is way too far. So we got to focus this thing down on Internet of Microsoft, Microsoft of Things, and Internet of Microsoft Linux. So we have Microsoft of Things, Internet of Microsoft Linux, and what was the other one? Damn it. It just moved on me.
Linus One or is Linux gone?
Yeah, that's too long, I think. Plus, the Linus One thing is pretty old. Microsoft of Things is pulling ahead.
Although, I remember there being a Microsoft of Things sort of title in the past, but...
No, girl, you crazy. That doesn't sound familiar.
It might have sounded familiar.
It may have. It's possible. Microsoft of Things is winning by a pretty clear margin. People seem to like, I do like the 3-word titles myself. Azure goes. Internet of Microsoft Linux.
Short and sweet.
Microsoft of Things it is, I think. I think we have our winner. Thanks, guys. I think the crowd has spoken. Microsoft of Things. It's funny, after we pick a title, it often gets more votes. Because there's a bit of a delay, plus people like a winner.
They sure do.
Microsoft of Things. I actually
solid.
think they have solved a problem here too, and I think that came across in the show. But did you guys see that tweet by Hughes that was this is how we make a light bulb? Did you guys see that tweet? I'm gonna pull it up real quick. If you
Hughes
didn't.
as in like...
Phillips.
I missed that one.
Yeah. So I got a screenshot of it because it's pretty funny. So the tweet goes like this: how many servers could it take to turn on a light bulb? And then there's a slide from Philips that shows how the Philips Hughes architecture works. And it's this massive cluster of systems that uses several cloud providers, external infrastructures, has message queuing systems, has all this different stuff, plus the bridge that it communicates in your own LAN. Like, it is a super complicated thing. I can see. I'll see if I can open up a bigger version of it so we can see this. Yeah, there we go. So you can turn on your lights. And every single hardware vendor has to make this for when they want to make an IoT device. And then that's not even how they're going to update it. This is the problem that Canonical set out to solve with Ubuntu Core and snaps and transactional updates. Like, this is a big problem that a lot of people are trying to take a crack at. Wimpy, do you feel like this could have been an Ubuntu Core product? No, we're not on the show now. I'm not recording anymore.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that was my first take on it. When I was like, why didn't they go that route?
I think the thing here, though, right, is it's not just about the device. I think the clever play from Microsoft here is that they're going to create these devices. The blueprints for the chips is going to be made available.
Yeah.
So that
it's Silicon 2
fabricators
services.
They can create the devices on behalf of those people that want to make devices and sell them to consumers, but then all of that is now connected to the Azure Sphere security services. So for every one of these devices, that for the lifetime of that device, there is now an Azure subscription.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to
monetize
your cloud platform,
Yeah,
and I think that's the clever play here from Microsoft. It's a business generation, system.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a good point.
Silicon to Services could have been a title.
Silicon as Service. Wow. Yeah, it is that. Microsoft is making a Silicon as a Service. I'm going to write that right now. Azure Sphere.
By the way, have you gotten any response from that person I recommended you guys consider having as a guest?
Azure Sphere. Shit, I just lost the sentence. Fuck. What was I saying? Azure Sphere is Microsoft. What was it? Something about Silicon as a Service, but
Silicon as Service,
it was catchier than that.
Service.
Shit. Azure Sphere is Microsoft making Silicon as a service with Linux.
Linux powered.
There we go. Boom. I got it back.
It was never really gone. Just playing hide and seek.
We call that murdering the thought baby sometimes.
Graphic?
Yeah. Well, it replaced. Have you ever heard the expression thought rape? Yeah, we were trying to come up with a term that was less.
Okay, no, I like it then.
Yeah.
Given the context,
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, so we walked back thought rape to murdering the thought baby, which I guess is better.
I'm not sure which is better.
I don't know that I think about it out loud. It's not so good, actually.
Why not? Well, technically, couldn't you plan B the thought baby?
This is egregious.
Yep. This is egregious.
Thanks, Stallman.
He's usually there with it. Yeah, I don't know. I need a better term. You're right. I need a better term.
You know, if we were fancy, we would have like a little cartoon Stallman that would pop up on the stream every time you played a clip from him.
And it's like his belly, like a jolly belly would shake a little bit, and his hair, his beard could kind of like, blow in the breeze.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Does
would
it say
be pretty
ho
good.
ho ho?
Silicon as a service. Yep. Azure Sphere is Microsoft making Silicon as a service with Linux at its core. That's what I came up with right there. That's pretty good, right? It's pretty good for a show description.
I think you got it.
Oh. So we tried something to do with this week's TechSnap. Be curious. I don't know if has anybody listened to TechSnap, because we tried something a little different this week. Should give it a listen. Give it a go. Tell us what you think. TechSnap.systems later this week. Give it a go. After it comes out. It's not out yet.
Question, Chris. How do we suggest a guest for the show, possibly?
Well, I mean, you've mentioned before to me, Twitter's fine. Contact page is fine. I forgot. You've mentioned somebody to me a couple times. I just forgot who it was.
Lou Maresca?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Lou. Yep. I know Lou. We were also going to have another guest on today, but he didn't make it. I just remembered that.
That was a shame, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was that tree person you mentioned.
No,
right?
that was the guest I remembered. No, but the Linux Server I/O guy was going to join us today, right?
Yeah. Yeah, last week he said he was going to come on this week.
Yeah.
Well, maybe next week. I'm curious about it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had a quick look at that, actually.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to him about it. He said he'd stop by this week, but I forgot. It's okay. We could have used it a little more in the show, but that's fine. Galen Hunt.
I was saying...
Yep.
I was recommending Lou because he often he does work for Microsoft, but he does mention how much he hates Windows, and he does use Linux on occasion.
So we don't know what happened with Sri. We don't know. He sent me a tweet saying he was in the lobby, but I don't know what. I'll have to follow up with him later, I guess.
Yeah, I saw him in the lobby earlier, and Midfree was over there, but then he was AFK.
Okay.
Yeah, like I staged him and everything, like a good 15 minutes before you even came in, and then I don't know, he AFK.
Time zone issues.
Maybe he fell asleep.
Emma and I are making secret plans right now to do a barbecue outside of Lady Jupe's at Linux Fest Northwest. Yep.
So Linux tailgating?
Was that?
Linux tailgating?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, Lady Jupe's tailgating. Totally. Yep.
I'm so sad. I'm not going to make it this year.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah, I have to work.
There's a lot of people that are making it this year that I'd like to make it. It's, I think it's going to be kind of, there's going to be some people that haven't made it before too. So there'll be the grade, but it's going to be kind of a different kind of feel this year, I think.
Speaking of Lady Jupes, how's that gas leak coming along?
Gas leak? Oh, you mean my propane? Propane, yeah. Fixed. It was a busted regulator, which they're supposed to last 10 years, and ours was only a few years old, but that's what it was. So we replaced that.
So it's all good.
Yep. It's great.
Was it a warranty or was it just?
I actually didn't even try because the regulator is only $25, and then, to take the RV down there and have them work on it for a day is such a hassle.
Oh yeah, you're spending more money in fuel than it would take.
Yeah, and I had a friend of mine who helped me do it, and his name is Jonathan, and he was a nice guy, and he came over, and we just made an evening out of it. We fixed the propane regulator, and then we ate Indian food and drank wine. So.
Yeah, it's not too hard. You just need to remember the Teflon tape.
Yes, yeah. I had the pipe dope.
Pipe dope. Yes.
Yeah. Got to put it back in the right way. I don't even know if you can actually put it in wrong, but you got to put it in the right way, and that's about it. It's just a 1-to-1 swap. But
I mean,
you know, you could always
you could have always gotten Richard Trethewey to help you out with this.
I could have also, you know, blown up the rig if I hadn't caught it. So it's like it's a simple fix, but if you don't catch it, it could be dangerous.
Everyone dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, your story sort of scared me from doing any sort of like mobile housing or anything like that.
We although, you know, the positive side of the story is we made it through the harshest time of winter in Washington without our furnace. We just used electric heat. Thankfully, we had plenty of electric, and so it's actually kind of nice.
The electric costs more than the propane does here, right around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm paying $2.50 a gallon for propane, and it works out to about 9.2 cents per kilowatt hour, as opposed to 11 cents per kilowatt hour of the RV park.
Interesting. So they charging you based on your monthly power usage?
Correct. Yes. That plus rent.
Yeah. That's usually, I think, not too uncommon with the monthlies. Is they'll charge you for your power usage, but they.
Oh yeah, it's pretty standard across the industry.
Yeah, but are you not having to pay for water or garbage, right?
No, I'm not paying water, garbage, or anything like that.
Yeah,
Sewer.
so it's still kind of or sewer. Yeah, that's kind of nice. So it still works out. But yeah, the power usage thing is interesting because, you know, I think it's the same. I think because the rigs don't have the thickest walls, and you get people in their 60s and 70s who are cold all the time, not to be ageist, and they crank the heaters and they just suck up a ton of power. I think is what happens.
Yeah.
And so.
And next thing you know, you're looking at your power bill. You're like, my God, what am I doing? You know?
Yeah. Well, I just got a note from Noah. I guess he's up against the clock, so he's not going to hop on Mumble and join us. He'll just be going live, so we'll have to clear out here in a minute or two. But there's a new RV park, brand new, shiny, just opened up just 5 minutes from the studio, Eric.
I saw that.
Yeah.
The Smoky Point RV Park.
Yeah, I don't know, now the Smoky Point RV Park might be the old one. There's two now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the old one's not so nice. But the new one, you know, all new, brand new sites, 50 amps everywhere, gravel
They have long-term stay
places
as well.
Yeah, it's like it's not crazy expensive for a week either. I was thinking about parking there for the week before Linux Fest and just have a 5-minute commute for the week.
Yeah, my wife got a job in Fremont, and so we've been thinking about, we were thinking about moving up north there a little bit, make the commute a little easier. But we're not so sure now because traffic on I-5 is worth $9.90.
Gotten so bad these days. So bad. So bad.
Every time I'm watching like the news in the morning.
Yeah.
Everett to Seattle. 90 minutes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep. I know. It's so disappointing. So it's so like driving through Washington is such a fucking chore now. It drives me crazy getting through here. It's just the worst. Really sad to see it go that way because it's such a beautiful state. You want to be able to get around and go to these different places, but it's becoming such a chore to go anywhere. All right. Well, on that positive note, I should probably wrap this stuff up so that way we can make room for all Ask Noah. So the stream's going to go dead for a bit, so that way we can clear out all the buffers and the streams and whatnots, and that way Noah can take over.
Yeah,
but
gotta get the pressure washer in there.
Yeah, exactly. You got to, clear out like all the popcorn and the drinks before the next show starts. So the stream will be down, but if you're watching on jblive.tv or on YouTube, they should fire back up once he's able to take over from Grand Forks, which will be just a few minutes. So.
Mostly Stallman beard hairs in there. That's what
we gotta come and vacuum out the beard hairs. All right, you guys. Thank you very much for being here. Goodbye, Mumble Room. Thanks, you guys, for making it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good work, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye. Goodbye. All right, chat room. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you, too. And I encourage you to stick around for the Ask Noah show. It's what I do. I get off the air and I turn on the Ask Noah show. And usually Wes and I hang out and take a listen. So... thank you for making it, and I hope you enjoyed the Azure Sphere stuff. It seems pretty interesting. It was really, I think, pretty cool of Microsoft to get their top people on that Azure project on the phone with us while they're at a conference. Like, people moved some mountains to make that happen for us. So that's pretty cool, too. And I'm glad you were here to be part of it. And enjoy the Ask Noah show and all that kind of stuff, I guess. I don't know. What do you think, Wes? Is that it?
That seems like a total change of topic. I don't follow you at all.
Man, he's always arguing with us, right? You know what? And here's, before we go, my favorite.
Well, wait. You said commercial software.
There you go. I did. Wait, no, I didn't.
If only we could get him to call in and ask Noah.
I didn't say that, actually, though. That would be so awesome. All right, everybody. Stream's going to die here in a moment. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week. Say goodbye, Wes.
Be safe with your bodies.
and spay and neuter your pets too.
Oh yeah, do that as well.
Yeah, and barbecue your burgers.
And maybe spay and neuter your irresponsible friends.
And sous vide your fish.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Oh, good advice
All right.
today.
Goodbye,
Get outta
everybody.
here.